All right, we are all set.
Okay, great. Welcome everybody. Thank you for joining us for the Monday, July 13th briefing. We have a focused briefing for you today. We are going to talk about really just two things. One of them is related to the climate emergency and the city's ongoing work to becoming net zero energy city. We have an update with some numbers from the Burlington Electric Department. I'm going to be joined in a minute by Darren Springer, our general manager for the Burlington Electric Department, and then we'll talk to Kara Al-Nasraoui about Burlington companies and nonprofits, small businesses that got PPP assistance, and just share some of the breakdown there from some of the PPP news from last week. So then we'll open it up for questions. Let's start with the update about the net zero energy city and the our climate action goals. So our net zero energy city goal is something that was announced. We've been chipping away at it for some time, but a year ago we announced, really still less than a year, isn't it, Darren? I'm losing track of time a little bit, but it was last
September.
Last September. So coming up on a year, we released a roadmap to get to net zero energy. We are defining net zero energy in this context to mean no emissions across electrical, thermal, and ground transportation sectors. We're already there in the electric sector. Thermal, which is the heating and cooling of buildings, is a big challenge, as is bringing down emissions related to transportation, which has been growing in recent years. And that graphic on the right shows what it essentially is going to take to get there. And we announced a commitment to do everything we could to get there. And this really constitutes together a very ambitious climate goal, perhaps the most ambitious that it is the most ambitious that we're aware of in the country. What we want to do today is share a little update on how we are tracking with respect to actual results and actual on the ground improvements on our climate goals, net zero energy goals. So let's go to the next slide, Olivia. Why don't I turn it over to you, Darren, and you can take the slide here.
Thanks, Mayor. This slide builds on something that was in our performance measures report, which is up on our website, and talks about essentially the emissions reductions that we've been able to achieve. And these are lifetime in the orange and annual in the blue. So the lifetime is over the life of a measure, whether it's an electric vehicle or a heat pump, how much emissions is going to be avoided as we install those measures. And we've looked across our different programs between 2017, 2018, and 2019. During that time, we launched our first electric vehicle incentives, our first electric bike incentives. I think we were actually maybe the second utility in the country to have an electric bike incentive program. We launched our electric lawnmower and electric bus and heat pump incentive programs, all at different times during that 2017 to 2019 timeframe. And we took those numbers, which are represented on the chart, and then we have the pending numbers from some of our bigger projects that are happening in 2020. And that includes the emissions reduction from the 2 electric buses, the transit buses that came to us for the Green Mountain Transit fleet in January of this year, as well as a large geothermal project that's going to offset a significant amount of fossil fuel use for building in Burlington, as well as a commercial scale heat pump project that's also going to offset a significant amount of emissions. And so what you have here is just looking at those 2017 to 2019 programs and those big projects for 2020, a lifetime emissions reduction of approximately 20,000 tons. And just for scope of comparison, that would be the equivalent of having 4,000 vehicles taken off the road for a year of time. So it's a significant amount of emissions that's been avoided just through those programs just to date. And we're only, in a lot of ways, we're really just getting started.
Exciting, Darren. Thanks for laying that out. Let's keep going, Olivia. Another sign of progress that a new analysis has just confirmed is that we are doing well with respect to the climate action plan goals, which is a prior climate document that goes back to, I think it was released around 2014, which set a target for 2016 and then following years about where we want to get with respect to tons of greenhouse gas emissions. And you know what is striking to me, I mean, I think we're all used to seeing these projections made by government agencies about reductions of carbon emissions, and then routinely we see challenges meeting those projections. It looks like, Darren, in this case, maybe we're starting to see some good news.
Absolutely. Yeah, we were very interested to, we have a 2018 baseline from our roadmap report, working with Synapse, who helped put that together in terms of emissions and fossil fuel use for the year of 2018. And we were interested to go back looking at 2010 and 2013 when we had emissions data as a result of the climate action plan, and really take a look at, what is our trajectory over that period of time. The climate action plan goal, because emissions were rising from 2007 to 2010, emissions were rising. And the goal for 2010 was to take those emission levels and have them stop rising and then go back to 2010 levels by 2016. That was what's represented in the orange dot there on this graph is the 2016 climate action plan goal. What we found, comparing on an apples to apples basis, the Synapse analysis with the emissions inventory, is that we are down roughly 20,000 tons from the 2010 levels, which is a good accomplishment. I think a lot of that is in part a result of being 100% renewable on the electric side and really eliminating emissions on the electric side. And now we are moving, as you mentioned earlier, Mayor, towards tackling emissions from buildings and from ground transportation as part of our next steps here.
Great. And so it's interesting to kind of parse it out that way, Darren. So and we got to the 100% renewable electric in 2014, I believe, right? So
that's correct.
So that got us below the threshold. The continued progress shown on this graph since 2014, however, is a sign of some progress in other areas as well. Is that the way to read this? Is since, because that is a down slope since 2014. Do you think is some of it attributable to the other sectors since then?
I think, in looking at the data, I think and this is true not only really in Burlington, but we're seeing this statewide as we're starting to see the electric sector clean up in terms of the grid statewide, is we're making initial progress on emissions through renewable electricity primarily. And we've seen that thermal and ground transportation have been more challenging sectors. And so I think some of our progress here, really maybe the lion's share of it, is result of our work on being renewable in the electric sector. And really now, to continue to see the line go down, we would have to make additional progress on thermal and on ground transportation, which are the largest sources of emissions, energy-related emissions, not only in Burlington, not only in the state of Vermont, but really in the country. We've seen transportation in particular be the largest source of emissions in the country over the last few years, as well as in Vermont. So you had a slide earlier that pointed out the different sectors we're focused on, and that's an illustration of why. Yeah.
And I think as we get a little farther, I'm not sure if we have all the slides in this slide deck or there'll be more tonight at the full presentation of the council. I think you start to see some reasons for hope that that these other sectors, the new incentives, the new initiatives that we have around essentially electrifying everything are starting to bite and starting to take some emissions out of those other areas, even if we're in the early innings of that still. Let's, do we have any more, Olivia, or where are we here? So, okay, this goes back and tells the older story. It goes all the way back to 1989 that efficiency has had a huge impact in terms of lowering our emissions up until now. It's been before the 100%. I think of this as the first chapter. Is people have heard me talk about this before. No, this is the the efficiency measures that were implemented starting in 1989 have kept us, what that chart is showing, at a, less electricity consumption today as a community, even though we've had some population growth and even though there's been a grand proliferation of electric devices in the last 30 years, we actually consume electricity today in Burlington totally and whole than we did in 1989. And you can see what we project how much more we would be using had we not been able to conserve that gray area there. A pretty stunning figure that $11 million annually in electric bills are saved as a result of these. As a result of these efficiency measures. Another stunning stat I've heard you say, Darren, that if the rest of the country had followed this trajectory, we'd have something like 200 less coal burning plants today than we do. But that isn't what happened. Burlington's charted a pretty unique course here.
Yeah, this is an amazing accomplishment over a number of decades, and it continues to be important in terms of our work at BED. Energy efficiency continues to be a bedrock of what we do. And to see that even statewide electric consumption has increased around 10% during the period of time, where in Burlington it's actually lower by 8.8%, demonstrates how strong the programs have been here. And I think the interesting thing to think about when we think about net zero is, as great as this accomplishment was, we want this to look different in the future, because we're actually going to rely more on the renewable electric grid for our energy use as we electrify, and less on fossil fuels. So we want to see electric use grow in the future as opposed to shrink, but for a beneficial reason, which is to benefit all of our customers as we move off of fossil fuels and move towards using more renewable technologies.
Excellent. All right, let's. This is another very positive part of the Burlington climate story. Back in, you can see as recently as 2010, there was virtually no solar installation here in Burlington. The industry started changing. We vowed as a city to change that. One of the first events we did in the new administration was to commit to making real improvement with respect to our PV installation in the city. There was regulatory concerns at the time about how PV approvals happened here, and for other reasons, there just we hadn't seen a lot. Since 2012, there has been a dramatic, really an explosion in the amount of PV that has been installed here. In part, that is a function of broader state and national trends, but I think in part it's also that a lot of people within the city, both within city government and in our partners in the private sector, really have been working hard at this. And we have gone all the way up to the point now where we are the #1 solar city per capita in New England and #5 in the country.
Yeah, this is an amazing accomplishment, looking at the growth curve with solar. And, I'm here in my office, Mayor, in my home in Burlington. Behind me, there is a hot water heater here that uses solar. So I wanted to have that today, and nice sunny day. We've got all the solar cranking in Burlington, and my hot water is heating up with solar today, which is always nice to watch. We've seen, and this is both rooftop systems that individual homes and businesses are putting up as part of our net metering program. This includes larger installations such as the airport project, as well as solar on city buildings like we have at 585 Pine Street at BED. And in some cases, projects that we've got a purchase power arrangement with. So this is an array of different technology approaches, different regulatory approaches here, adding up to Burlington really being a leader in New England and in the Northeast on a per capita basis on solar. And we at BED very supportive of that, want to see that continue. It's a great in-city renewable resource for us.
Let's keep going, Olivia.
Mayor, that is the end of the
Okay.
net zero slides. And we have one more after this with Cara.
Okay, great. So that is a sneak peek at the longer presentation that's going to happen at the council tonight. Some additional slides that'll be part of that presentation show that these incentives that we have been offering for electrifying everything from forklifts to bikes to cars to cold climate heat pumps. The uptake rate has been significant over the last couple of years, and I think there's reason to be hopeful that it is going to increase. Certainly, we're all worried, about the ability for people to keep making these investments during what is now suddenly a significant recession. At the same time, Burlington's green stimulus, Burlington Electric's green stimulus incentives seek to counter that by offering even more generous incentives than we already were previously, $800,000 in green stimulus incentives to the year ahead to continue to accelerate these trends. Anything else, Darren, you want to add to this about this presentation or framing that you can give for the public here?
Yeah, I think the other point that I would love to make is, we are embarking on the most ambitious goal of any climate goal of any local community in the country, and we've done some research to confirm that. And that means we're trying to do something that nobody's done. We've got a great track record in Burlington with our energy efficiency and renewable energy efforts, and I think it's fair to expect that progress will not be linear. The roadmap anticipates that we'll see exponential progress over time as technology costs continue to come down, as program adoption continues to move. But as you were saying, we have some hopeful data. And one of those points that I'll just mention now is if you look at how many electric vehicles we needed to have registered in Burlington in 2019 to be on track with the roadmap, we were very, very close to that figure. I think the roadmap had a projection of 337 and we had about 300. So, we look at something like that and we think, okay, if we can continue on the path that's laid out in the roadmap and see some of that exponential growth, knowing we're taking on an ambitious goal and there's going to have to be innovation and experimentation as we go, then we're going to make an outsized contribution to tackling climate change in Burlington. And that's something that I think the BED team and I know the city team working on the net zero roadmap effort take a lot of pride in.
Excellent, Darren. Well said. Having this be the graph that's up there as you're talking about non-linear growth really kind of makes the point. I mean, if you just kind of drew the line of where we were at on this from 2010 to the first couple of years of this is a very modest increase. Then it kind of jumps up a little bit to 2015, and then what's happened since 2015 to 2020 is just a real explosion. Hopefully, we're going to see similar market shifts with these other key technologies. I do always, I always get excited when we have these conversations, hoping we're going to have a conversation with the council now in a world that has a lot of pessimism about climate goals and where we're headed. It really seems to me Burlington is showing an achievable, affordable, high impact path here to getting to our climate goals that is pretty different than most of the national narrative you hear about, an international narrative you hear about climate change. This is tangible, on the ground progress that is happening. It is happening. People definitely have to change certain things about how they invest their money, and they have to. We have to do new things, but it is not. It is still a future that has a high quality of life where people are. It is not a austerity vision of how you get to the net zero energy, which I think Americans and austerity, that would always be a very challenging route. This is, I think, a pragmatic route, and one that will be good tonight to have this discussion and show some additional progress on. So Darren, thanks for coming on this and being part of this. Why don't you stick around in case there are some questions about the presentation. Let's quickly now bring in Cara. And we just wanted to talk a little bit again about the PPP program. There were, this is the pandemic-related program. The P's don't actually stand for pandemic. They stand for Paycheck Protection Program.
Yeah, right.
This is one of the major federal programs for trying to keep the economy intact as we move through the pandemic and through this very challenging time. And last week, there was an announcement that Vermont had succeeded in securing, I think, approximately $1 billion in PPP program loans total. A subset of those loans, about a little more than 350 million of that total program, has gone into small business loans, truly small business, defined as loans of $150,000 or less. And we wanted to share that Burlington has secured nearly $29 million of those loans. So when I say Burlington, these are Burlington businesses, small businesses that have secured nearly $29 billion of those loans. And in addition to that, I believe, right, Cara, there was a number of nonprofits, that also received several $1 million more in these loans. And when we call these loans, what's important to remember about these loans is that in many cases, these are unusual loans. First of all, that they're very low interest loans. Second of all, in many cases, we are hopeful that these loans will, because they are tied to keeping people employed, shift over, and large amounts of these millions may ultimately be grants, money that sort of stays in this community and doesn't need to be paid back to the federal government. Cara, what else can you add about this? This seems to me the program working as it was supposed to, the program getting significant dollars into Burlington the way we hoped it would. I know you and your team and other parts of the city team worked hard to get this money into the right hands. How do you feel about this?
Yeah, I actually think this is pretty amazing results. We've got a little less than 10%. And again, I'm talking about for really true small businesses, the small businesses that are the backbone of our community. So I want to highlight that. We did get more PPP money than just this, but for me, the focus is on the small business community. So again, these are loans, hopefully to be forgiven, of $150,000 or less. And almost 4 million of that also went to small nonprofits. And some of the larger nonprofits you can see on your second bullet point also received larger loans, which again, we hope will turn into grants. I guess I wanted to highlight the amount of work that the city team put in to make this really happen. If you remember, when this program was launched, it was a first come, first served basis. So we had to mobilize really quickly. We had to keep the business community informed. We had to let them know which lenders were working on the program. We set up webinars for them. We connected them with people in the Department of Labor in Montpelier if they had questions about employment and how to handle their employees in order to get the loans forgiven. There was a lot of outreach done and a lot of time spent on the phone, a lot of time helping them gather their documents, a lot of time working with our local lenders. And I just feel like that work really shows through, because this is a lot of money that did come straight into our community, and we're hoping can be an important piece of keeping our small businesses afloat.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Cara. Thank you for describing that. Thank you for the hard work of you and other members of the city team to help support that. Here's another group we wanted to recognize that worked hard for this, which is the lending community. Was committed to working with Burlington businesses and nonprofits and making sure that this money got to Burlington. And that effort was led by the team at People's United Bank, which originated $6.3 million in these loans. Northfield Savings Bank, also and Community Bank, very substantial investments. TD Bank just behind that with a $2.4 million, and then Citizens with another $1.4 million. We I think in each of these cases, my sense is that these lenders went beyond what would have been easy to just work with existing customers, and were receptive to new businesses that might not have solid banking relationships coming forward and trying to do what they could to work with those businesses, knowing that these loans really were lifelines in many ways for businesses, that it might be the difference between surviving and not. And I've talked to some of the leaders in these banks through this period, and know how hard their teams are working as well. And we appreciate it. We think this is important. These investments have happened. It's a lot of money in a time where it's very much needed.
Yeah, I mean, I would just reiterate that and say there was a lot of the community really mobilized quite quickly. And I spoke with a lot of these lenders personally during that time. And I know they had their staff working evenings and weekends to try and process these, knowing it was a first come, first served situation. But between the city staff and these lending institutions, I really feel like the community mobilized, and the results are amazing.
Well, Cara, thank you. Thanks for coming on to talk about that. Why don't we pause there, and we'll open it up for any questions. Kieran is in the studio. What's on your mind today, Kieran?
Well, just had a few questions. First thing regarding the city council meeting tonight, obviously going to be talking about net zero initiatives. You guys have been talking about where we come from, where we started, and where we are now leading up to this point. Will there be any new initiatives presented at tonight's meeting?
With respect to the net zero energy city, this is really a report out on how things are going. We are not launching new, there are no really brand new initiatives to announce tonight. We will be showing some additional slides that show how the recently created incentives are working in a number of areas. Again, you'll be able to see how these new incentives for example, that could have a really big impact over time. The cold climate heat pumps, this electric technology that can get people off of fossil fuels onto 100% renewable heating and cooling. We're just about a year into some new incentives for that program, and we have some results there. So we'll be talking about recent action and talking about where we go from here. So that's what you can expect.
Fantastic. And secondly, I had another question. It's on a vote that will be happening tonight at the City Council meeting, pertaining to net zero energy. Do you mind if I ask that now?
Of course, no, go ahead.
So there is talks about a vote happening tonight regarding a Black Lives Matter mural being painted somewhere on Main Street. I know that vote is supposed to be taking place tonight. How do you think that will go, and where do you stand on that?
Great. So the question, in case people are having trouble hearing online, is it's a question about the council resolution tonight calling for the creation of a Black Lives Matter mural on Main Street. This is a mural similar to murals that was recently installed in Montpelier, and another one that's gotten a lot of attention in Washington, D.C. This is the leader of this effort is Councilor Karen Paul, and she's been working very hard on it. It's going to pass tonight. I think I last heard she had at least 8 co-sponsors for this. I'm supportive of it, and our Department of Public Works team has been working closely with Councilor Paul to make sure we can install it properly and safely, and do that quickly. So that's I think that's where it is for now, and we'll be working to quickly see this actually created.
Fantastic. So you sound pretty confident it'll pass tonight.
That is what yes, it sounds very likely to pass.
Fantastic. And is there a specific location that's been decided on, or just somewhere on the street?
There will be more information later in the week on the precise location and precise layout, but it is quite close to here at City Hall. And stay tuned. More to come very soon.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
We do have 2 questions online as well. The first question is from Lauren. Lauren, I think the mayor may have just addressed your question, but I'm going to enable your microphone so you can let us know if that addressed your question or if you need more.
Actually, that was perfect. Thank you.
All right, great. Thanks, Lauren. So our next question is from Liam, and Liam, you should be able to enable your microphone now.
Yep. Hi, Cara. This is a question for you, if you're still on. I was wondering about how things are going downtown and on Church Street. We're kind of in the middle of tourist season, and have you been getting a sense on how things are going, if kind of the current level of activity is sustainable for anyone, and just sort of how things have been?
Yeah, thanks for the question, Liam. Things are picking up on Church Street for sure. We've added some cart vendors back. We added our Open Streets program, which is closing College Bank and Cherry on Saturdays. I will say our small businesses do still need support. In all honesty, we're not out of the woods. I think we've been working hard. The city's put gotten a lot of programs set up. I know that the merchants themselves have pivoted very quickly, and they're either doing, and I think you and I have spoken about this, they're either doing a takeout or curbside pickup. They're doing even local delivery of retail items. They've moved to online platforms. But again, with limited capacity allowed in their establishments, it's still a little bit problematic. So we do track the traffic on Church Street, and it's definitely up. And I think that bodes well. And as long as the weather's warm and people can be outside right now and feel safe, I think that's also really helpful. But again, I would still urge people to shop local and consider their local businesses.
Do you know if any places have had to close, or people is that happened yet? Do you know?
There are some visible closures on the street. Not all of them were COVID related. And right now, no, I haven't heard of a lot of places that are ready to close yet. I think they're seeing some decent numbers right now, and they're hoping for a further upturn. And we're doing our best to connect them with grants and loans and marketing and programming. So right now, I think we're sort of in a wait and see period. And we'll see which businesses can make it. And I'm hoping that a lot can.
I just wanted this is probably a quick clarification. You said, traffic is up. Is that compared to where it was like a week or a couple of weeks ago or a month ago? Or is that compared to what normally is in the summer on Church Street, just when you mentioned those traffic numbers that you had?
It is not the same as it normally is on Church Street, like in previous summers. As you know, we're not having our Festival of Fools or our Jazz Festival, and those things do have an effect on our business community. So when I say those numbers are up, they're up from the last few months.
Great, thank you so much.
Yes.
And Mayor,
I just wanted to, I'm going to just quickly show, we're really trying to share the data we have transparently, publicly. I'll just show really quickly, you can see from our dashboard how what Cara is talking about here, that you can see this is cell phone information. You can tell this is based on cell phone users on Church Street, and this has been done in a way that doesn't raise any privacy concerns. You can see back in March what March looked like. You can see the enormous drop in activity during the stay-home months of April and May, and then you can see in June and July things steadily starting to come back. Not close to where we were even in March, and definitely not close to historically where we'd be in July, the kind of height of the summer season. But I think there's some signs for hopefulness there that if we can continue to contain the virus, that some level, even while we're in this virus suppression mode, some level of downtown activity can resume. So, and we're trying to do everything. Like Cara said, the city's trying to take a really active role in that, and create every opportunity we can for business to take place safely, so that our authentic businesses that make downtown Burlington so vibrant are still here when we get to the other side of this pandemic. The open streets efforts, these efforts to create more outdoor opportunities in the right of way, we hope are having an impact, a positive impact.
Great. And Mayor, just lastly, one question for you, kind of related. Have you had any contact or any communication from Brookfield at all about City Place and if they're going to be doing a public update anytime soon?
Liam, so you may remember, just want to make sure you're aware, a couple of weeks ago, and we did have a briefing on it. There was an exchange of letters between Brookfield and the city. This is right back. This was in June, so a few weeks ago now. And the commitment that Brookfield made at the time was to work in good faith with the city to try to have a new development agreement in place by the end of the month, and then to give a public report out on that on August 10th, the city council meeting on August 10th. So that is currently what we are working towards with Brookfield and City Place.
Great. Yeah, I recall that. I just wanted to check in and see if anything had changed. Thanks.
Nothing has changed at this point. If it does, we will certainly, we'll be back to share.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
And that is all we have for today.
Great. Thanks everybody for tuning in. And we'll see everybody in a few hours, 5:30. The Zoom meetings begin with the Board of Finance Zoom meeting. And there's a work session at 6:30 to focus on downtown parking policy. And then the regular meeting starts at 7:30. So we'll see everybody later, and stay posted. Members of the media interested in future briefings this week. We haven't totally settled in on the schedule yet for the rest of the week. We will be in touch. Thanks everybody. Stay safe. Take care.
Thank you.